Nobody ever does anything once. And I believe you can't change yourself and can't get out of these bad patterns that you're probably locked into unless you actually look at who you are. You actually understand that you are subject to many of these forces that I talk about. Nobody is actually superior. So it's not like you're worse than other people. It's just, this is who we are. So if, because of our nature, because of how we evolved from millions of years ago, we have a tendency to get caught up in the emotions of other people, viral effects, emotional contagion. Why would it be that some people are exempt from that and others are not? No, we are all subject to these forces. And it's better to be realistic and look at it than to be someone that's avoiding the truth of the reality. I think too many self-help books try and compliment the reader. Say you're really, this is holding up a kind of idealistic image of who they are. I'm the opposite. I'm trying to show that you're actually as screwed up as other people are, and it's better to confront it and turn this around somehow. You do have aggressive tendencies. We all have aggressive tendencies. It's our nature, and I explain why we have them. And if you're aware of that, you can take that energy that we all have and actually channel it into something productive. If you stop denying it and you realize you have this energy, you can turn it into being ambitious and pouring that aggression into becoming something great, into making something great, into using that energy to fuel your persistence, to push past any kind of adversity, to be aggressive when it comes to getting your way and getting what you want. And I even talk about the positive aspects of anger and how to channel your anger into your work. I use a lot of anger in my books because I am angry about people's hypocrisies and the stupidity that we constantly confront. And I use that anger to fuel my writing. But instead of getting angry at people and pissing them off and making a lot of enemies, I channel it into my work, into my books. You can channel your anger and your frustrations into your work. There's many ways to take that aggressive energy and make it productive, but you won't do that if you deny that you even have these tendencies. You really don't know who they are. You're walking around thinking that you know your wife or your husband, your children, your boss, your friends, but you really don't have a clue. Yeah. You don't understand their experience. You don't really know what they think of you, actually, as well. Most of the time, you're projecting onto them your own images. Let's say, you had a particularly bad relationship with your father or your mother, and you don't like people in authority because of the relationship to your father. And so you meet somebody who's powerful, who has authority, and you hate them. You have a bad instant reaction because you're projecting onto them some image from your own childhood. So you don't see the people that are in front of you. You're not seeing them. You're not understanding them. And what happens when you operate in darkness? When you operate without knowledge, you make mistakes. You say something very stupid that offends the other person. You don't even realize that you've offended them. And weeks later, you notice that they're kind of cold and they're not responding to your texts and your emails. You have no idea why, because you probably did offend them in some way, because you don't know who they are, you don't know their experience, you don't know what's going on inside of them or what their likes and aversions are. If you stop for a moment and tell yourself, damn, I don't know what the people around me are really thinking about me, it's a startling revelation, and you're going to want to change that. So I'm trying to say that people have a character, and what I mean by that is it's their core, it's who they are, it's something very deep. It comes from their DNA, there's a genetic component. It comes from their early childhood and the kind of attachment they had to their parents. It comes from their early experiences with friends and teachers and at school, and it makes them who they are. And their character tends to be revealed in certain things that you must pay attention to. And the reason it's so important is you want to be able to judge people by their character. You want to know what runs them from deep, deep within. Because if you don't, if you make a mistake, you will hire them as a business partner, or you'll get involved in a relationship and it'll be a disaster because you didn't see that actually they have very negative patterns and they only come out later. So I want you to be able to look at the people you're dealing with and literally see their character. And I give you some clues and tips on how to do that. First of all, people have patterns of behavior. Nobody ever does anything once. So let's say if somebody sent you an angry email that offended you, and then they go, "Oh, I'm sorry, but that's not who I was. Something came over me. You know, I'm not that person." You will probably accept that, but the truth is, they never did that once. It's a pattern. They've done it many times. If they've screwed you in some way, they've screwed 10 other people in their past. You want to see people's patterns of behavior, the kind of compulsive element in them. Okay, that'll show you something very deep in their core. You also want to look at them in the moments where their guard is down. You know, we all wear masks. We all try to present ourselves as being noble and great. But the mask comes down in certain elements. So you want to look at how they treat their children, their spouse, their employees. They might be nice to you because they want something out of you, but when their back is turned and they're talking to other people, they're the biggest raging animal around. That gives you signs if they're trying to disguise this from you. But in the little details of life, they kind of reveal who they are. You want to see how they react under pressure. People under pressure reveal something elemental about themselves. If they get hysterical, if they get prone to pointing fingers and blaming other people. If people have power, if they suddenly gain power, if they're elected to an office or they're made manager or whatever, they suddenly will reveal elements of their character. They will either become someone who's kind of ugly and power hungry and manipulative, or, which is much rarer, it will reveal that they're very responsible and they can handle power well. So these are signs where people reveal, they almost ooze out of them unconsciously of who their character is, of who they really are. And I want you to train you, the reader, not to look at people's appearances, not to look at their smiles and the masks they wear and the compliments they pay you, but to pay attention to these other deeper signs that they are revealing of something much below the surface that is actually going on inside them. Look at the little signs that people give off. They'll say, "Oh, there's traffic," or "I had so much work to do," whatever. But actually it's a sign that they feel kind of superior to you, that they feel that their time is more important than yours. And these little details that people are constantly giving out, you see signs of who they really are, but you're not paying attention to them. Well, think of it in those moments in life when you're like falling in love with someone, right? And through their eyes, the eyes are really connecting in that moment. Both sets of eyes are kind of interacting, and there's a powerful, powerful attraction going on through that. And the eyes, then that kind of looking and gazing, and the pupils get dilated and there's excitement. It lights up the entire face. The smile, the cheeks are raised, etc. And so people give off these signs of excitement or detachment all the time. So if you're trying to influence someone, or if you're trying to seduce someone, you want to be able to pick up those signs that you're having an effect on them through the eyes. I talk a lot about distinguishing between a real smile and a fake smile. A real smile kind of lights up the whole face, and it also lights up the eyes. And then you know that you're connecting with that other person. Whereas that fake kind of tight smile that a lot of people have, you know that there is no connection going on.
I'm trying to tell you that there are no shortcuts to mastery. And we all love to think that there are shortcuts, like some app that'll give it to us quickly. And I'm giving you the bad news. There's really no such thing when it comes to being great at your career. But there is one sort of shortcut, and that's finding a great mentor. There's someone who can look at you in real time and say, Navid, this is what you should do, what you shouldn't do, this is what you're doing wrong, this is what you need to practice, don't go over there, go here. They're going to save you years of mistakes, they're going to streamline the process, and they're going to make you focus on what you really need to practice and get better at. So it could normally take 10 years of doing something to reach that level of creativity that I'm talking about. With a really good mentor, maybe in 5 or 6 years or 7 years, if it works and it really clicks. So the key thing, though, is how do you find that person? Because it isn't always easy. First of all, you don't have to find a mentor. There are examples of people. I have in the book Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors and entrepreneurs who ever lived. He never had a real mentor. He used books as kind of mentors, but so it's not, you don't have to, so get that out of the way. The other thing is, you don't want to look for a mentor just because you feel the need for it, and you have to have something to offer the other person. It's like a mutual coming together. He or she is getting someone that can help him or her with their work and can do some of the drudge work, etc. You can help organize their life, and in return, you're getting all this brilliance from them. So you don't look for a mentor until you're ready. If you're fresh out of college, you don't have anything to offer necessarily. You don't have any skills, any experience. You're too naive. You're too sort of stupid for me to just be about it. And so no one's going to want you as their mentor, and if they do want you, it's probably for all the wrong reasons. They really want you as a slave, and you're never going to really learn anything. So maybe don't look for one until you've got a couple years under your belt of jobs where you learn about the world, you have organizational skills, you're disciplined, etc. Okay, that's rule number one. And number two is there's a combination. Sometimes people cross your path by accident who can serve as a good mentor, and in other cases you have to go out there and look and try and find him or her. The thing to keep in mind is it's a very important relationship in your life. It's like your second father or mother. You have a chance to choose it, and you have to be careful because some people are bad mentors in the world. They don't want to let you discover who you are. They want to keep you under their thumb. They're going to inhibit you in some way. They are going to relive some of their own psychological problems on you, and it can turn into a negative experience. So you want to choose someone that you identify with almost emotionally. They share similar tastes and inclinations. You can say, in 5 or 10 years, I want to be that person. If they cross your path, if that kind of person crosses your path, you got to make them into your mentor somehow. If not, you can go out and find them. People are more willing to serve as a mentor than you might believe if you have something to offer them. But as an example, in my book, I talk about one of the contemporary masters that I interviewed, a woman named Yoki Matsuoka, who's a brilliant robotics engineer, etc. She was going to MIT in the robotics department there, and there was a professor who everybody else hated because he was a rebel, had really long hair, was kind of nasty, wasn't very nice to people. And she had the same attitude. She grew up playing tennis, and she loved John McEnroe and Andre Agassi. She was a rebel her whole life. She goes, this is the person who has the same spirit and mood as I have. I can really feel, I would like to be like him. That's the kind of thing that you want. It's not just an intellectual connection. It's also an emotional thing where you look up to and you admire this person, and there's that kind of connection going on.